Welcome to this special Sikhi Marriage Week podcast. In this podcast, we'll be covering the different challenges a couple goes through in their marriage at different points of their marriage. But we're also going to be looking at the joyful parts of the marriage and the blissful moments in marriage. So let's get started, and I'll introduce you to my dear wife, Indra Kaur, who I'll be having this conversation with, and we'll be talking about this exciting journey of challenges. Exciting, right? So, if we used to start off with when we first got married, and I was going to pretend, I don't remember the date, but I do remember the date. Yeah, it's 2008. 27th of April.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it's a going joke, isn't it? A lot of men pretend they've forgotten, but yeah, I do know the date. So if we go back to that time of first got married, back in those days, 2008, what was it? What would you say was the most joyful thing about that time in our life? And then you can follow with what was the most challenging thing of that time as well.
Okay, so the most joyful thing for me would be the fact that we were married. We were able to live together, wake up together, go to sleep together, go to the shops together, just do everything without having that fear of being seen together. And to give it to some context.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Obviously, we were together, I think, 10 years before we actually got married.
Yeah, something like that.
So there's a lot of
years,
hiding, ducking, and trying not to be seen. So I think for me, it was just the fact that I could just get ready and say, yeah, I'm his wife and he's my husband.
And just for that clarification, when we're talking about that, being in a long-term relationship before actually getting married, so during that part and during that time of our life, we obviously weren't really living that gurmat way of life of
not to the full extent, no.
Yeah, no. So I think we did in our own way, and as we all do, practice Sikhi.
I think we're all on a journey.
Yes.
And we were on a journey. But if you look at it from Sikhi aspect, I think we helped each other on that Sikhi journey, not being married as well.
No, definitely when we met, our relationship did always have some form of Sikhi in it.
Yeah.
So I know in the same breath, it's, well, being in a relationship isn't practicing Sikhi. Definitely, acknowledge that. But in the same breath, like I said, it's important to have these open conversations, and that weren't practicing Gurmat in that way at that time. But it doesn't mean that Sikhi wasn't an influence in our life, and that we weren't trying to grow and embrace Sikhi even during that time in our life.
Yeah.
So now, having covered that part, it wasn't the plan, but now coming on to now having that understanding, having that context that we were in a relationship prior to getting married, but being married, it felt like this. It was so freeing, and then at least that inner consciousness, it's clear then, and I think that's exactly what came to mind when we was chatting before, that for me, that in itself was so joyful, being free and being together and connecting together. And to be honest, and even those moments of trying to, if you remember early in the day, in the early days when we try and do part together.
Oh God, what a mess. It was a complete mess.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that? I do remember, and I know why, but like obviously for the listeners, why would you say it was a mess trying to read Gurbani
we
together?
couldn't get the timing right, for one.
What do you mean timing?
Like when I'd want to do it, you weren't ready, or when you'd want to do it, I wasn't ready. So the timing was a mess.
All right. Well, okay. Let's go to when we went
On
to our honeymoon.
Oh God.
We did Nithanem together.
Yeah.
Right. And what? So tell us a bit about that.
And then you'd constantly correct the way I was reading, the words I was saying wrong. And I think eventually I just thought, forget this. Just,
We've all been there, right? When one person just can't help but, be that Santhya teacher in the midst of the actual Nithanem.
Yeah, but that's not what Nithanem's for.
No. It's not the recommended way. And to be honest, the samatha that we got from Mahapurukh, from Baba Gurudev Singh Ji, was that if somebody is even doing Rawl and is actually sitting and reading from Akhand Path Sahib or doing the Nithanem, if they make the odd mistake, you allow it, because you don't you don't break that flow, and then you can have that discussion afterwards. Or unless they keep repetitively making the same mistakes again and again, and it's really kind of distorted, then Mahaprabhu would say, then you can politely somehow intervene and take over.
Is that what you did?
I don't think so.
Well, in the end, what I do remember is we tried for a while, and then we did our own thing.
Yeah. Actually, the second, let me go back to the Mahapurukh's Bachan, and I know it's about us, but it's important because we're looking at this from a Sikhi lens. And so the first Bachan was, if it's the odd mistake, just you let it go. The second one was, then if it's repetitive mistake, then politely just try and say the right word without putting them down or anything, and say correctly, pronounce it correctly. And the third one was, then if it's completely out of hand, it's really ashud ucharan, pronounced incorrectly constantly everywhere, then they said that then you could intervene at that point. Okay. So those are the three bachan of the Mahapurukh, which I think is great for everybody to know, because we normally can, the one that's got that habit of correcting constantly can let the arrogance get the better of them and not realizing we're actually looking down at
the other person.
Yeah, Kabir Ji, there's a slok, I'm sure you'll remember the slok. Kabir Ji says, Kabir, garba na kijiye, rank na hasiye koi. This is that, don't have that garb, don't have that pride, and don't start laughing at others that you see to be lower in that moment. But so how did we resolve that issue? What happened?
We did our own thing. You did your Nithanem, I resorted to doing my own Nithanem. And that's fine. That's okay.
And I think it's important, that is, sometimes we try and force having to practice Sikhi related things. Are you doing your part, reading Gurbani, the Guru's words? And it's almost sometimes we force it, that we have to do it together, and only if we do it together, then we're a great couple, but what do you think about that?
Well, it reminds me of a particular time when I was trying to get you up one of the mornings, and I was getting really worked up and really angry. And I remember you saying, how is this going to help you, your Sikhi, and you're doing the opposite to what the Nithanem's telling you to do? And I think that really helped me, because...
So just to put it in context, it was trying to get me up for Amrit Billah.
Yeah.
And Amritullah was always a struggle for me. And so when we got married, it was one of the things that you had a lot of jar for.
Yeah.
As in, not this type of jar, but
no.
as in you was really excited about was that we'd get up Amritullah together.
Yeah, and all go Gurdwara because that's what I did before we got married.
And I think it was you was trying to get me to go to the Gurdwara with you in the morning.
Because I'd roll and I wanted you to come with me.
Yes. And I can remember I think when it happened around the second time, and he was trying to get me up, and it wasn't super early, it was probably around 5ish. And I just wasn't interested.
No.
I'd still get up and do my part whenever back then, you know. So and one of the days you just completely lost it. And I think the part that you've forgotten is, it wasn't when I said to you, well, what's the point of you getting...
No, it did help.
No, you listened to someone, do you remember? You actually listened to somebody's gatha. And in that gatha, we're not going to mention whose gatha it was.
Okay.
But you listened to somebody's diwan, and in that diwan, this person that was doing the gatha described exactly that
scenario. Okay,
scenario.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, that scenario, and said that sometimes you wake up on Amritullah, you want your your partner to get up, they won't get up, but you get so angry, you kind of lose yourself. And the whole point of you connecting spiritually was defeated by you getting angry, and I think that moment you thought that's what made it click. But these are challenges, aren't they?
Yeah.
And these...
Because you have a perception in your mind that when I get married, this is what it's going to be like. Because you've done it so long in the way that you do it, that the other person is going to almost like follow, and you're going to do it together, and it doesn't always work like that. But that's okay.
So would you then agree with this? You don't have to. Would you then agree with then supporting each other would be as long as we support each other in their spiritual practices?
Yeah.
So when they need that time and space is supporting
Created.
that and creating that for them.
Yeah.
And instead of being desperate that it has to be together.
Yeah. But I think it's important,
Yeah.
if we're having an open conversation, for it to be both ways. That you support each other both ways to create that time and space to allow that person to grow spiritually.
Are you trying to ask me something?
No.
Like, as in, I might... Okay, that's fine.
No.
Because, and just on that note, right? Because, and you'll remember this, we went to one of these very relaxed Sikhi camps. And, you know, when everyone sits and gets together and reads their Nithanim together, reads their Baniya together this is one particular camp. And within that group, and then there was one person that was kind of reading the Bani out of tune and really loud, which is okay. It's not judging that person in that way.
Yeah.
But then it might not work for you personally.
Yeah.
And it's that same thing, isn't it? It's like we don't have to force these things, and it can just be okay to say, well, I'll support you to, just like in that scenario.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I remember later on in our journey, we've tried then maybe sometimes. It's not that we haven't, but just to let Sangat know, that's not remained the case.
No.
throughout.
There's been periods where we have carried it
when
on.
I remember we had moments where we'd do Ras and Aarti together, and we'd actually sing it in the same rhythm, that we'd have that jal going, and it'd be very matchy voices. So that worked really well. And I remember we was traveling in India back, I'm not sure which
before
trip
the
it
kids
was.
were born.
Yes, just so it would have been around 2011 trip that we did when we stayed at Darbar Sahib. I remember we was specifically, and we'd always drive ourselves. I remember in India.
I'd drive.
Well, yeah. No, I did drive too.
Okay, I
You
drive.
You would drive mostly. That's because
Mostly.
you get motion sickness.
No, it's just I'm better in India. Yeah.
Yeah, I was alright, apart from one time in Amritsar, and that was just crazy. Do you remember in Amritsar, where he was trying to get out?
Did you
and
hit someone?
Yeah, not a person.
Yeah, but you
like
did.
a car. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I didn't hit a person, just to put it out there.
Mm.
Yeah, and even if I did, I would have got out, but I didn't. It was another car. But like, it wasn't even like I hit someone. Everyone was hitting everyone.
It was like that.
It was bumping cars.
Bumping cars?
Yeah. It was mad. So, and I remember then, and it felt so powerful. And we'd do Raras, and when we'd be on our travel and do Raras and Aarti together, just to put it out there, just like Bhai Gurdas ji said, so that Aarti gaviye, Amrit Vile Jap Uchara. And where there's a line by Gurdas ji, and he talks about our evening Nitnem being Sodar. When we then sing the Sodar and then sing the Aarti as well. So the Sodar was sung, and then the Raras is then read, and then you sing the Aarti as well. And you'll see that in a lot of the Takat Sahibs and in Nanaksar, because Nanaksar is where our Sikhi journey started from. So they sing the Sodar, and then they read the Raras. And I remember we was traveling with a few of the Gursikhs, and they found it quite powerful as well, didn't they? So it wasn't. It's not that throughout our life. It was in that way, and it's quite interesting how we started talking about this, because this wasn't actually what we
No, it wasn't
planned.
Mm.
And I remember then getting to a point as well, which was more later on, only a few years back. I would read Gurbani really fast, and it would just frustrate you, and you just couldn't keep up, because it wasn't how you wanted to read Gurbani. And do you remember that phase as well? Like Job Sahib, it was just on like some next level speed, and but now it's turned again.
And it's always changing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's what one of the things is, isn't it? It's challenges will always keep changing, and you got to find then ways to adjust to each other, and try and keep away from the draw and taking out the bailna. Yeah. Anyway, so going back to one of our, I would say, which was a more serious and challenge at the beginning of our marriage. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think this is a big one for quite a lot of people, is living with the in-laws, with mom and dad. I think it's difficult. It's not what I thought it would be, but obviously when you're in that situation and you're used to living in a certain way, and then it's not the same, and it's not what you had planned or envisioned, then things don't go right, I suppose, in your way. So I would have to say that was the biggest challenge when we got married. Very traumatic, especially when you're a new bride and you've got hopes and desires of it looking a certain way, but then it's not followed through. So it's a big one, I think, for a lot of women at the moment. But saying that, it's not just women that experience that. I think men too go through the same emotions when their wife moves in.
Yes.
Because it's difficult for them.
Yes, in the sense of, by the way, I meant that there's that excitement that we spoke about earlier on. There's that joy.
Yeah, but the challenges...
Yeah. The joy, but then where the man often feel, and this isn't taking away from, the bride, from the woman at all, but because you mentioned, the man does go through something as well. That's why I just thought I'd say this bit. And and I think I've heard it many of times, and you kind of feel stuck in the middle, and you really don't know which way to turn and which way to go and how to navigate in that situation. It's such a difficult one where you're kind of torn, and it should never be like that. And I think what we found was the reason why it gets to that is as well is not having open conversations.
Yeah.
So I think like you came from a background of having open discussions
expressing,
to an extent.
expressing. If you're not happy about
yes.
something, say it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's going to resolve the situation,
Mm-hmm.
but then at least it's out in the open and people are aware of how you're feeling.
Yep.
And I remember saying, why can't you just say it? Why can't you just have this conversation? And it was a no. It wasn't going to happen.
But I think that comes down to a couple of things. One thing is for one, as a family kind of network, and how you've grown up and how you've dealt with things growing up in that specific family. And then two, I think it will come down to an individual personality at that time as well. So some people avoid confrontation. And I think the more I'm learning, watching other podcasts and real talk, is that a lot of men do try and avoid confrontation and find it uncomfortable. And I was thinking, and you wouldn't really expect that, because normally the man will have more of a macho image normally of being able to stand up for certain things, but then, and when it comes to something like that, actually they'd rather avoid the confrontation, but it could save it could save so many issues.
Because I mean, if I remember correctly, it came to a verge of, okay, well, do we stay in this situation or do I pack my bags and go? And that's serious when it comes to a marriage. We've waited all these years to be together, and for the sake of whatever it was,
trying to work it out, and we're here. We're not blaming anyone.
No.
This isn't about blaming parents. It's not blaming in-laws, or it's about when you're put in a new situation and you're not able to kind of find a way that works for everyone. But having open conversations now, I think, is happening more. And and it is sad. I'm sure so many people do end up in that situation where we was at that crossroad of what you're doing then. How did we get through that?
I think we spoke loads about moving to a bigger house, moving areas, to kind of resolve the situation. We looked at a few houses, but I think at the end of it just, we were fortunate that mum and dad were like, "Tusi jao, tusi apna kar labo." We're happy where we are, and we'll see what the future brings. And in that sense, whether it's full-heartedly or not, but we had their blessings to kind of embark on a new journey. So this is what we did. And very quickly, I think we moved, house. And
during that period, would you say faith played a part in supporting you in any way in having your Sikhi at that time? As difficult as it was, as much kalesh meaning when it's an environment where it becomes argumentative, awkward silences, avoiding each other within the household, and that wasn't more so between us, but then the pressure in the relationship is more so than that expectation, like, why aren't you stepping forward? Why aren't you resolving this? So having a dharam, having your faith and the Sikhi, in whichever way we had our Sikhi, how would you say it played a part in helping you during that time?
Well, it
in
was
your
my
life?
it was my go-to. So when things weren't happening or when things had gone crazy, it meant that I could then lock off and go to our little room that we had, or go to the Gurdwara. It meant that I had something to go to. And I always knew it would be okay. Things do work themselves out. It's sometimes difficult when you're in it to see the light, that how long is this going to take? How long is it going to go on for? So I think that faith I did have, and it was there.
And I think it's important to say at this point that we sometimes don't realize, because there's a lot of times you might hear from people of our generation, sometimes we speak negatively about Gurdwara, and I know not yourself, but other people, they're not doing this, they're not doing that enough. Yes, where all that might be true, where they could all do a bit more for the generation today, but we forget that a Gurdwara is actually a sanctuary, where it's just like, Guru Sahib Ji says that Satgur Sharan Ayo Tohari Mile Sukh Naam Har Soba Chinta Lai Hamari, that it's a sanctuary, and sanctuary is a place of where you feel safe and protected. And sometimes it's not about where it might be providing these certain services for you, but just being in the presence of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, where there's a vibration, where so much Bani has been done, and sometimes just to be sat there and in Sangat where Kirtan's happening, that in itself, the vibration of that becomes a sanctuary, and it becomes a support system, doesn't it?
Yeah, most definitely.
So if we was to just wrap this part up of then when for us, we took that step in, we felt the healthiest option was to move out and get our own place. And we're not saying that is the solution for everyone. No. And we're not saying that was the solution. We're saying the solution was that we did eventually then sit down.
We negotiated.
And and we worked something out.
Yeah.
And when we worked something out, yes, there was hurt and pain, but as a team, as a unit, like again, Guru Amar Das Ji say that Tan per hina akhin behan ikatthe hoye, ek jot doi murti tan per kahiye. So that husband and wife is that actually, that try and fuse that light together within themselves, where they try and come and work together on something. And in the end, as crazy as it was what we went through and experienced, we did find a way of supporting each other and trying and taking that next step, the next healthy step that we could have done in that time for us. And it was done with the conversation. Did take place. So communication is key.
Yeah, definitely.
During that period, if you can remember, our Sikhi was also going through a turning point.
Yeah. I'd say when we moved here, from the moment we...
Even if you remember when we were still back at Mum and Dad's, can you remember where our Sikhi to some extent was...
We were trialing different things.
We lived in a box at one point in our Sikhi, and it was just, this is it. This is all that Sikhi is. We only go to one Gurdwara. And there's nothing wrong with that if you do that, by the way, if you just go to one Gurdwara. But for us, we were very closed, weren't we, to some extent. But we started exploring, didn't we? We started going to other smargams too.
Yeah.
So at the same time as there was the challenges at home with being the dynamics of living together with in-laws, for you in-laws, parents for me, there was that almost like an excitement if we look back at it now. I don't know, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but like an excitement because it was that shift in experiencing Sangat and going to Smagams. I remember this.
Because we both enjoyed listening to Kirtan from even before we got married. May it be whatever style of Kirtan, but we did enjoy listening to Kirtan, and we always had it playing in the background regardless of what we were doing. So, yeah.
And we'll pick back up on that in a moment when our travels and then the fun that we had and the joy that we experienced of traveling and going to Gurdwara up and down the country and going to different smagams and Ransbais. So, but before we go on to that, which is then what helped us through the second challenge we actually faced. And that second challenge was, you want to tell what that...
I don't know, there's so many. Which one are you talking about?
When we first moved and my attitude.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, yeah, your attitude stank. It was really bad. You didn't want to be here. You wanted to... You would always find a way of ending back at mum and dad's.
When you say here, by the way, you mean
at home.
In the new home. So even now we're recording
home.
In that house that we bought then back in 2010. 10 we moved here. We moved here in 2010 February. So when we here is this house. Right?
And I'd phone you to say, where are you? And if you were finishing off at work, you'd end up there and you'd be having tea there. And I'd be like, but I thought we were going to have tea together.
When you say there?
At mum and dad's. And it was really difficult. It was a difficult time because I felt like I was battling for my relationship with you. And it was a really not nice place to be in, because although I had this house now that I was living in, I was now fighting for you all over again. So it wasn't pleasant.
So just to clarify, what we're talking about here is that when we did take that step, for that time, we felt it was definitely the right step to take, and was to move out to... And the relationship did definitely improve as well then.
Over time.
With mum and dad.
Yeah.
But I was then, in my head, went through that whole guilt trip of not at that time realising that it doesn't matter, even if we're moving out, it doesn't mean I've given up and I'm not a support to my parents anymore. But in my mind, I took it like that. And because I had that frustration that, I've had to leave my parents' home. And within that, when we moved here, to me, because even though I was so happy that I kind of got to have that dream house I wanted, with the extra en-suites, and so that we could have Sangat come around and stay. So it was my dream as well to have all of that, because I always had that jar to have that excitement of having Sangat around and not being, having that, not having any restrictions of being able to do that, which we then was able to do.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, there was something niggling at me and saying, you've not done right. And then within that, then I was taking that out on you.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize for a while I was doing that. And because internally I was so disappointed with myself. How could I do that, leaving my parents? Even though I came to understand I didn't leave my parents. All we did was we moved out of the house that we lived in together, which became so uncomfortable anyway. But I didn't leave them anyway. But that didn't click until later. I actually heard a Mahaprabhu talking about it and saying, ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਘਰ ਜੁਦਾ ਲੈਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ, ਪਰ ਇਹਦਾ ਇਹ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮਾਪਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਹੀ ਛੱਡ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਆ. That doesn't mean you've left your parents, because you can still be of service to your parents. You could even actually be of a greater support to your parents now when you go in and you do specific things. So that I would then take that frustration out on you in the way, and when we say take that frustration out, it's to be clear, what would that look like? And that would be more so just
really stroppy, not talk to me,
yeah,
or bite back.
yeah, I'd be moody, wouldn't I? Yeah.
Yeah, or then say little things to, not being very nice to me.
Yeah, I wasn't doing it consciously, by the way. I'm not like an evil person, and it was from the back of that pain I was going through internally, not realizing that I'm talking about, and it was my whole thing, wasn't it? Like, I don't want to get my Sikhi wrong, like,
But I think a lot of men do go through that now.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard
they
it.
do, and it's not even religiously, but I had that on top of me, which is like, am I doing wrong by Sikhi what I've done? And I'd try and understand it. Remember, by Gurdas Ji's Pauriyan, like by Gurdas Ji, like there's a Pauriya by Gurdas Ji, you can do all of this good, but then if you leave your parents, but I was taking that so literally, because I hadn't left our parents, we'd still had a relationship with them. We still was there, and
a better relationship.
Yes. So it's important, I think, what we're saying here is to understand sometimes in life that we have to take certain steps, but it doesn't mean we've left, our parents, or we've not. It still can be a positive relationship.
Yeah.
What did we do then? Not consciously, but what happened during that time in our life that helped us to shift from that specific challenging time of our life, of me being moody, as it was put? Can you remember what, like?
I think because we started to go to programs and our Sangat group increased, we were then looking at our behaviours from a different lens, maybe. So it's not just about reading the Bard, doing the Nitnem, but it's actually about what is your Nitnem telling you to do, and for me anyway, and how to react when certain challenges come and how to respond to them. So I think that you got busy with Brajar camps and talks, and
but just before that, before I started doing talks, I'm sure you remember our amazing road trips.
Yeah. But that's a part of the whole increase of Sangat, wasn't it?
And we remember we went to, like, we started going
up north.
Up north, meeting Sangat there, going to Kirtan programs, listening to now different types of katha, and it was almost this buzz, wasn't it? And we had this. It
was very free.
Yeah, it was very, very
free. Yeah.
Refreshing time in our life, wasn't it? Around 2010, 11, and remember we had this little golf that we just loved. We'd just play our kirtan, go travelling, and that starting to enjoy Sikhi, starting to see the different flowers of Sikhi, different Sangat, and love. And I think that started to take us away from that bitterness, didn't it? That I was holding.
Yeah.
And we really connected and clicked at that time.
Yeah.
We grew together. It was an exciting time, wasn't it? And I just remember, we mentioned the golf because you loved that car at that time, didn't you? I was talking to Preacher and earlier on, and I was telling him about, like, sometimes there's nothing wrong with getting nice things, but and when we first when we got married, and when we were still at mum and dad's, just going back a little bit, and you try and fill that gap, don't you? Even though things weren't great at home, but remember then, you try and fulfill it with materialistic things. And you remember what we went and bought you remember what it was?
An Audi. Yeah,
an Audi A4 convertible. So inconvenient, wasn't it? And sometimes you just try some, the silliest of things, thinking it's going to fill that gap, and it didn't do it for us, did it?
No. But coming back to the whole change in when we moved here and the road trips, I think I went through a change as well.
Yeah.
If you remember, from styling my hair, I went to a patka, and then the makeup, the jewelry from a patka, then I started learning how to tie the star, and then it was more simple look, and that was a big change in our marriage
That was a
because
huge shift.
so from wearing lots of makeup and jewelry and styling my hair,
which would take hours
and then hours to take it off, it went to a very simple look. So it was a reduction in jewelry, a reduction in makeup, the clothes I wore, and I think that had a very big impact on our marriage as well, because
in a positive
way, because
and we're not saying to anyone that we're against somebody wearing jewelry and makeup, by the way.
No,
we're
no,
just
no.
saying this is a personal change that you went through at some point with the way we started living and practicing our Sikhi.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think for me, like a lot of people say, you know, how, you know, when women try and grow their gears out,
do you want to say how that transition happened? Because when we moved to this house, we had Maharaj here.
Yeah, so we had
Maharaj for 10 days.
We had a Saj Bhat at home.
Yeah, so Guru Granth Sahib Ji.
And very, very lightly, I remember you saying, so Indra, how are you going to cover your head whilst, you know, we've got Maharaj at home? And I was like, oh, just wear a junni. And you're like, is that practical then? And I was like, okay, I'll just wear a patka then. And then, so I wore a patka for 10 days at home. And
so just if anyone else is listening, not sure what patka, so patka is just like
you just
covering
tie it round
cloth,
the back.
Yeah.
And then as the days were progressing, so you're just like, so you're just going to take your patka off then? And he's like, oh.
As in like when Guruji was going to leave and go back to the Gurdwara Sahib after 10 days of the Sahaj Bhat.
Yeah.
Which Sahaj Bhat is so like when you read Guru Granth Sahib Ji's Bani,
slowly over
time, you can have breaks in between.
And then it got that thought going that actually I don't really want to take my patka off. It's been a really lovely feeling. But I think it gave me the strength to then say to family and friends that actually I'm not taking this off now. And
it was a big thing.
It wasn't
no small thing. It was almost like certain people were almost like doing absource. Absource is when somebody passes away and you lose someone, to saying that, oh my God, we've lost Indra.
Yeah.
And because you decided to start just covering your head.
Yeah. But I think that was a turning point for me. And it's great because I had your support. And
there was a certain Sangat wasn't there that we got into that helped us through some of these 5 thieves, as we call them, and we've all got our battles, right? And I remember growing up, one of my biggest battles was anger, and so I lived with having a lot of anger. That's another story in itself, how and why that came about, and but I don't want to put it again. I don't want to speak for you, but do you want to speak about maybe what some of your challenges were with your were concerned?
Oh, I had a lot of anger issues as well. I'd lose the plot.
I didn't want to say it, but there you go.
I was always ready for a fight.
Ready to rumble.
Yeah, always ready. I still am to a certain extent.
No, you're still stern, but you've just found...
Yeah, a different way, probably.
A different way. But and that was again from when we'd get into a disagreement in our earlier days. There was times when you wouldn't speak to me for how long? It's just that I don't want to say it, so you say it yourself.
I don't know, a few days maybe.
Oh no, come on. And the rest.
A week?
Yeah, I remember there was times where it was almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And but then there was a Sangat, wasn't there?
Yeah.
That we came across that really helped in shifting that anger.
Yeah.
And shifting living a materialistic life and having a greater purpose.
Yeah.
And that then just shows the importance of Sangat. So whilst we were struggling with me being frustrated and then having an effect on my mood, and then it was coming out, and then you would be short fused, where then you would stop talking to me. But then, like Guru Sahib Ji says to us, Guru Arjan Dev Ji says that Sangat ka gun bahut adkai par sua ganak udare. I'm not going to test you to ask you what that means. So, Sangat ka gun. Is it bahut adkai? Yeah, so Sangat ka gun bahut adkai. Which basically means the effect of Sangat is profound. Adkai means profound. And gun here means effect. And that's exactly what we experienced during that time in our life, where we met a beautiful, beautiful Gursik that really, really helped us to think. And do you remember the example he used to use? Remember about washing the car?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that because for us, Sikhi.
So your parents have said, go and wash the car.
Yeah.
And then the child would say, okay, dad or mom, wash the car, but actually not wash the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that example was for where we just thought Sikhi is only about reading Gurbani.
Singing and reading Gurbani.
As long as we get to do Kirtan, as long as we get to read Gurbani, but the focus wasn't on the actual
action.
Jivan itself of our life. That putting up a fight to the Panjor, Panje, Badde, Mahabali, like those, like trying to bound those Mahabalis, those great warriors of the five thieves, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Mohankar. But that just shows the effect of Sangat and how my frustration started to reduce, your anger started to reduce. There was a different buzz about Sangat. It was over.
Yeah, but we had so much Sangat. I mean, we did the weekly Kirtan programs in the house. There was just a foot flow all the time.
Yes, so we had this open house policy.
Yeah.
We had Friday Kirtan programs at home.
Yeah.
And during those Kirtan programs is actually how I started to do Prachar.
Yeah. I
started to do Japji Sahib presentations. Again, that is another podcast of its own.
Yeah.
I want to fast track. I'm going to miss out a whole load of our marriage, but I'm going to come straight to, I would say, is probably our life's biggest challenge ever, which was when I had a complete mental breakdown. And that was in 2017.
16. Well, it started in 16.
Yeah, but I'm on about...
Okay.
So, as in, there was a change in me in 16.
Yeah.
But the breakdown happened where I became non-functional.
Yeah.
Which I always say, people say, oh, yeah, everyone has mental health challenges. Everyone has mental health challenges. Yes, but where you have an actual diagnosed mental health issue is very different to general challenges of having an odd low mood. Having a complete breakdown, what did that look like? And we're not going to go into it in detail. Again, it's another podcast, isn't it? But what was the biggest challenge at that time?
I think
it's overwhelming, isn't it?
Yeah, I think my world was turned upside down completely.
Yeah, I remember you saying that at that time, that my world shattered. Like,
yeah,
it's.
I mean, there was so much going on at the same time, and I don't want to go into everything, but there was so much going on with like the charity and everything. But
in regards to Everything's 13, the projects that were going on,
getting
VG, busier, getting bigger.
Yeah,
Virat Singh's
poorly,
getting diagnosed with cancer. The Vidya we set up a. Whatever we call
the
it,
school, the students were living here. I was a manager at work, working part time.
Yeah,
the kids were only 2.5, 3. It
was all happening, wasn't it?
It was mental.
Yeah.
and then at the same time, you know, your personality was changing.
Personality is changing in the sense of I started to feel low about myself.
So you were changing, but then once I think you had your breakdown, I just couldn't understand what was happening. I couldn't understand. At the time, I didn't know that actually you were having a breakdown. It was like, what are you doing? Why are you behaving like this?
And just very quickly, like what a breakdown looks like is for the person that's going through it, nothing makes sense anymore. So your daily activities of getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, nothing makes sense. It's almost like you've forgotten how to do these things. How do you even get to that point? So everything is bad and a challenge.
Yeah.
You only see things from a negative perspective. There's a million things rushing in your head. It's almost like I describe it as like, it's like your brain almost like breaks and nothing functions anymore, and it all goes like this, and you don't.
And now I can I know. I know how that feels because not that long ago I went through something similar.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was like...
So we're in 2017. I've then had the breakdown, which was around February, March.
Yeah.
I came dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And that was our biggest challenge, wasn't it? That we've had yet in our lives.
Because it was...
through a lot.
Because the months to come then was... I think it was a question. Do I live in this now? Or do I take a step back and say, I can't do this? And that question pondered for a long time. But I think with so much support from everybody around us, I was able to stick at it. But I do remember...
Do you think your Sikhi went through a change again at that point? Or was there... Like, how did having a community that we belong to support?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, being who you are, I think, was very difficult in the sense that people have their perceptions of how things should be. But then also, there were certain individuals, no names, that became of a support to me. Doesn't mean that I necessarily spoke to them about everything, but just being there, you know. I remember when you were really poorly, I arranged for Sukhmani Sahib every week. Whether you were here or not, we'd still get together and do...
What we mean, whether I was here or not, I was so poorly with anxiety, I couldn't sit inside.
No.
Sometimes I'd
go for a walk or upstairs,
outside, not being able to actually sit.
Yeah.
And there were certain Sangat members that was of a huge support. And I was just actually thinking, like, why are we shying away from saying names? And I don't think we should. You know, like, originally when we went through our transition of being helped through our anger, and it was by Bhai Singh. He was a, you know, phenomenal human being that helped us through, you know, not even, we didn't go to him for help. We didn't realize we were being helped just being in his Sangat, you know, and shifting so many things. And then when you started arranging the Kirtan programs, and one of the people that you were referring to that stuck by you and was here
was Rajan.
Yeah, it was Rajan, wasn't it? And so, and why we don't need to? I don't think we need to shy away from sharing names. We're not putting them on a pedestal. We're just saying that human beings, you know, like there's godly virtues within every human being, and it's the most difficult thing for a family member, for a partner, to navigate through that period of their partner who is their rock, who is, you know, where I'm not your support, but we were each other's. We were like, you know, that partners, not in crime, but you know, partners in spirituality and everything, in every form of way, for that to crumble before your eyes. And
But I think also you have to have the right guidance. If I was given the wrong guidance back then, I think things could have been different.
yeah,
But I had, like, if we are mentioning, I had Bahadur uncle, who I'd go to every week to have a cry and say, what do I do now? This is how he's behaving. And the one thing they said to
Bahadur
me
Singh's
is...
a great soul, Gursikh, you know, who's done darshan of Baba Nand Singh Ji, Baba Ishit Singh Ji, and, you know, who was our go-to as well. And Baba Gurdev Singh Ji always led us to Bahadur Singh.
And they always said to me is just observe, try and not get entangled in what's going on. Just watch the movie almost and let him be, and it will sort itself out. And so any time you were having an episode, I just so badly want to listen to what they were saying, but there were times where I did, and there was times where I got engrossed in it. But that really helped.
Again, it comes to Sangat, isn't it? Like
it does. And I just want to say one other thing. Sorry. And about, I think it was a couple of years later where you were going through another episode, and I was really struggling with it. And another Gursikh, you know, again, I was like, why is he doing this? And she said, you know, you have to do an ardas, which I knew anyway, but and the shabad that she gave to me, that she used herself, was Prabh Dori Haath Tumhare.
Oh, that's a shabad that, and I've got a history with that shabad as well.
And she said, just give him the Dori. And it was almost
Not me,
like, as in Wagru, yeah.
Yes.
And it was almost like I had forgot, because I was so entangled in what you're doing, what you're not doing, and how I'm feeling, that I had forgot that actually I need to just give that back to Wagru. And I did that. And the other advice.
So Dori could be translated like the rain almost, you know, like Dori's like the string.
The string.
That we're all strung in. Beautiful shabad, isn't it, by Guru Arjan Dev Ji. Ji jant tere tare, Prabh Dori haath tumhare, soi karaye jo tud paave, mohe syanap, kachu na aave, hum barik tau sharanai, Prabh ape paid rakhai, mera maat pita har raya, कर कृपा प्रित पालन लागा करी तेरा कराया रहाओ जी जंत तेरे तारे प्रभ डोरी हाथ तुम्हारे जे करावे सो करना नानक दास तेरी शरण.
And the other thing which helped me was that she reintroduced me back to my roots of obviously Nanak Sar, and I never left it, but because the kids were so little, I stopped doing roll.
Okay.
And she was like, your kids are bigger now, they're sleeping through, you can go back to roll. And it was almost like, I can, that's me time, that's something I enjoy. And
I did want to say, like, we shouldn't forget, because it's really easy to leave in that situation, isn't it?
Very easy.
And yes, we've spoke about Sikhi, yes, we've talked about Sangat, but there was somebody else always gave you such positive advice, which is
my friend Karen. Oh, no? Who else?
She always has. She's always been amazing.
Yeah.
But your mum?
Oh, yeah.
Your mum wouldn't want... A mother would not want her daughter to have to live and go through that. But she never told you to walk away.
No, she, even when you were in the midst of it, and she'd say, Indra, inne tere naal hi theek hona hai, inne utte rehna, because I remember I'd send you to mum and dad's, like, just for a break, for a night, and inne kari wapas aana hai, as in he's going to come back home. And even now, she makes it very clear, if it wasn't for you, Indra, like, if it wasn't for you sticking with it, there's no way he would have pulled through.
So marriage is definitely a journey. There's definitely challenges, but there's definitely moments in there that are so joyful. And when you do get through such difficult times, that bond is even deeper. That literally when you get to then experience those words, ek jot, doi murti, like, yeah, we might be in two bodies, but there's times you actually start to feel one. And we're not trying to fool anyone that we live this perfect life. You know, even now, we have to constantly try and, you know, be conscious and find ways to grow constantly. It's this, and we will, and it will be like that for everyone until we actually merge with Waheguru, until we become that complete pure consciousness. Nadiya Ateva Baba hai samund na janiya, when we just merge back into the ocean of Waheguru. Until then, we're gonna keep learning, we're gonna keep growing, you know, and that's okay, isn't it? So I think it's important to take away for everyone that is finding intuitively in those moments the best way to. There is no perfect answer for anything.
No.
At times, it will be the Sangat that helps you, but at times, it might not be.
You might not know.
It might be your mum that has nothing to do with Sikhi, but it's just got her experience of life and comes from a place of compassion.
Yeah.
Because like Bhutta Singh would say, it's not just wash the car, wash the car, wash the car. It's about bringing and doing. It's not just singing. It's actually learning from whatever we can around us and continuing to grow.
A lot of people have said, well, why is it okay that you lot were able to work through it? Why can't we work through it? Why can't I work through it? If they're going through a difficult time and it's not going the way, in terms of the way they want it to go.
It's not working out.
It's not working out. Yeah. So you lot did it. You did it. What was different? And I think for me, and I've always said this, even if you put Sikhi aside, even if you put your religion aside, you put faith aside, anything else, is that I always felt that there was, that I had great love for you, that even through your breakdown or whatever, that feeling that I had towards you never went. It never felt like I was not in love with you. And that kept me going. Even when I was drove crazy up the wall, I always kept taking you back when you turn up at the door, was because...
and that's talking about when I had my breakdown.
Yeah. Was that. And I do say to people, whoever asks me, is that if I didn't have that, I'm not sure if things would have been the way they have been. I don't know if that advice would have had any weight to it. But because I did have that, it was like, yes, I'm going to take this on board. I'm going to carry on.
So now we have got a wrap-up point. Now we can say that sometimes when it comes to faith, when it comes to Sikhi religion, I spoke to a couple, not to a couple, sorry, I was speaking to somebody on a podcast before, and so many people are afraid to express and talk about love because they think, oh no, like they get it all messed up and confused with attachment. But no, love is the strongest emotion and bond that we can have. That's why the Guru spoke about Sachi Preet Hum Tumse Jori, that there are certain people that help us to ignite that Sachi Preet, that true love. And we shouldn't shy away in our relationships talking about, expressing and talking about love. So let's finish off with that Sachi Preet Hum Tumse Jori. Yes, that Pankti is talking about I connected that love to God, but it's often other people in your life that help you to ignite that love that is pure, then that will radiate to everyone. So साच कहूँ सुन लहो सबे, जिन prem kiyo, tin hi prab payo. When we have that love for each other, we're automatically getting close to God. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Please donate and help spread Guruji's message. Link is in the description below. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.